it's Quebec. And so we've designed this tour that starts in Quebec City. And the draw of it is really, you're in New France. It's like being in Europe. And it's a UNESCO heritage site. It's it's the only walled city in North America besides Mexico City. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place to start. These are your guides. This is myself and my husband, Regis. Regis has a very close contact with this area. He was born and raised in this area. So we're starting in Quebec City and we're gliding down the St. Lawrence to the area where he was born and raised in Kamouraska. Now our love story has a connection with Ciclismo. I don't even know if Laura knows this, but
Maybe
the
not.
year
No.
that I left, no. So basically, I was teaching in the Yukon Territory, Canada, beside your fine state of Alaska. And I didn't know whether I wanted to stay in teaching or be like my amazing mentor, Lauren, and start my own bicycle tour company. So I took a year off, and that's the year I worked for you. And I worked for a number of other companies, Traven International, Butterfield and Robinson. And this guy who I just met in the Yukon took his bike on the plane and basically courted me around Europe. He had my schedule and he'd just show up in Assisi and then he'd show up in Umbria and he'd show up everywhere where I was in Zermatt. And he kept getting thinner and thinner as the time went on because he was only on his bike with no support. But in the end, at the end of that season, that's when we decided to get married. So he's my co-guide and for in life and on this tour. So we live mostly up in the Yukon Territory with some time in our home in Quebec City and also in Florida in the winter. We feel very blessed. So we start here where it all began in Quebec City, 1608. Samuel de Champlain comes in and starts, like the first Canadian settlement in Quebec City. And as you can see, this Place Royale, with the oldest church in North America, is just minutes from our hotel. Our hotel is in one of these older buildings like this. And we start off, we do a beautiful ride along the St. Lawrence and then up the St. Charles River just to warm up, like a little 7 mile kind of ride to warm up. And then we do a walking tour and we go for a welcome drink at the Chateau Frontenac, which is this beautiful castle that you would see back here, right there. And this is our trip overview. We start in Quebec City, and as you can see, we've designed it so that the prevailing winds are at our backs, so we'll cross our fingers. And it's a pretty easy trip. It goes along, as I said, along the river, so there's not a lot of hills. It's not very hilly at all. And as you can see, day one's our warm-up ride, day two, 37 miles, day three, 25, day four, 35. And our last day is a rest day in Kamouraska, not a rest day, but a free day, I'll say. And so you could choose to stay on your bike, or you could choose to go kayaking, go shopping, a lot of different activities that you could do there. But we've got some different routes for you to do on that day as well. And other days, if you're a very enthusiastic cyclist and you want something a little longer, we can offer some options, some longer options where you actually go up into the rural roads a little more and you have like this incredible view of the St. Lawrence as we go along. I think, Lauren, I'm just going to keep going. And if you see burning questions,
Okay.
you'll let me know. But at the end, what are we cycling on? We're cycling on La Route Verte, which means the Green Way, which is a combination of paved bicycle paths or very hard packed with very small gravel on it. And a lot of it, as you can see on the right-hand side, just glides along the St. Lawrence River like that with different installations of swings and picnic tables and things like that. And if we're not on La Route Verte, we are on La Route des Navigateurs, which means the navigator's route. And it is basically the scenic road along the St. Lawrence. They built the Trans-Canada Highway. So all the big trucks and stuff are on that, and we're on the scenic road for sure. So you can see my partner Regis to the left. And what I wanted to show in that picture is just how behind him is the St. Lawrence, but we have all along the trip this beautiful view of the Charlevoix Mountains. You can see there one of Lauren's favorite ski places, Mont Sainte Anne, where I know Lauren does a lot of cross country skiing. I don't know, do you downhill ski there too, Lauren? But all along the way, we're seeing those mountains going along. That's me on the right there, just pointing out we're on the Route de Navigateur. And mostly all the homes you see are these beautiful heritage steep roofed. We say it's the area where the roofs are steep and the porches are deep along the Route de Navigateur. Why are we going in October? Well, because we have beautiful fall colors, and we have the migration, certainly of the Canadian snow geese. This, I'm just going to play this little video here on the left, just to give you an idea. Yeah. So there you'll see just a smattering of the, sometimes we get on the beach and there's hundreds and hundreds of them. As you can see on the picture that's down on the right as well. And we're going to have a local expert come and talk to us about that migration and about the birds, because they become our friends. We just see them every day as we float along. And every night is a sunset because we're on because of the shore we're on. And Kamouraska was voted by National Geographic one of the 10 most beautiful areas for sunsets in the world. And so all you have to do is just make sure you pick your spot, whether it's going to be from your hotel room, from the room in your inn, from your dinner spot, to make sure you catch that amazing sunset every night. And we generally, I say we ride from steeple to steeple, knowing that in Quebec, it's the French-Canadian history and culture is very based in the church, and certainly was when it was founded. And I remember my husband, Regis, came to our hometown in Ontario, which is as small as his little hometown, but he couldn't believe that there was more than one church, because there were all sorts of like Lutheran and Anglican, but in Quebec in general, there's one church. It's always in the middle of the village. And so once we cycle out of one beautiful little village, we can just see the next steeple on the way. And as you can see down on the right-hand side, you can go in and visit a lot of these churches along the way. So if that's something that's interesting to you, definitely encourage some church visiting, some church dropping in. And linked with the Catholic religion is also les croix de chemin. Les croix de chemin are the road crosses, and they were first erected by Jacques Cartier, who was our first explorer to Canada. And then that tradition kept on. And as you can see, if you look on the right, if you look up close, you can see on the left-hand side of the cross on the right, there's a hammer, and then there's another tool on the top. So this cross would be erected to protect all the tradespeople in that area. And then the one on the right is just a general one to protect travelers. So we're well protected along the way. You'll see many, many croix de chemin along the way, keeping us safe. We have lots of beautiful inns. We stay in our second night, we stay at La Maison Rousseau with this beautiful terrace, and you can imagine what that looks like in the fall. It's an amenoir, which has been turned into a beautiful inn, as well as the next night we jump up 1 century and we stay at l'Auberge de la Belle Époque, which translates to the Inn of the Beautiful Time. And we finally, in Kamouraska, get to stay right along the ocean in this La Maison au Coquillage, which every room has its own balcony and a beautiful view over the St. Lawrence. And it was constructed first as like a seaside spa. And so it's now just a hotel. and we're going to stay there for 2 nights, which is a beautiful place to be. The rooms are very, very different. None of the rooms that we're staying in are anything like the Holiday Inn. You can tell just from the different pictures how varied they are depending on the different inn that we are in. And they all have such an amazing charm. We had so much fun actually finding the perfect places to stay for this trip. And breakfasts are all included.
Beautiful.
They're all quite beautiful. They're all, we're making sure that there's lots of protein and whether it's, the beautiful pastries, the croissant, the pain chocolat, fantastic coffees and teas. In the back there, you'll see a cook stove. This one is called an illet, and we go through illet where they were made, and we actually do a quick visit at a shop of Monsieur Blais, who restores beautiful cook stoves. And we'll have a little visit there and just to see all the Cadillacs, the wood stoves that he has in there are amazing. Because in this area, we also in Montmagny is where Bélanger stoves were actually made as well. So I don't know if anybody have these beautiful cook stoves in any cottages or older heritage homes, but we're kind of in the cradle of the wood stove manufacturing area. There's other great food, of course. We're bringing la gastronomie of France to Quebec. And the first night we're at l'Entrepôt de Saint-Jean, which is a Parisian bistro for steak et frites, as you see in the top left corner. And of course, there's always going to be the options for the vegans and the vegetarians. And but you also see on the top right, tartare, which is a delicacy that we see in a lot of our restaurants. Lots of seafood, you see the scalps and the bouillabaisse and the mussels, lots of seafood if that's something you're interested. But lots, and then also lots of salads and varieties of fresh food. And most of the restaurants that we are recommending to you or eating at for our group dinners use local produce and local terroir. It's called products of le terroir. And so that's like the fancy food, but then there's the real food, or what I call the wheel food. Just a second. There we go. And so on the right, you've got la crème glacée, where there's lots of bar laitiers, which mean like ice cream bars, but not the ice cream bars you eat, like the ice cream bars you visit. They're everywhere. On the top right, you'll see la poutine, which is many of you may have tasted, that originated in Quebec with the French fries, the crotte de fromage, we call in cheese curds, what we call in English, and then a whole bunch of gravy over top. I can eat about 2 bites of that and I'm good to go for like the rest of the afternoon. Bottom right, lots of chances for on your free days, picnics. So you stop at la boulangerie to get your bread, and then at the charcuterie for maybe your sliced meat and your cheese, just like in France. And then of course you can grab your bottle of wine or your beer or your sparkling water at the grocery store as well. In the middle, I've got there's a beer, and that's just a picture from one of the many microbreweries that we glide by, that if you decide you want to stop at, or we have a quick tour. Bottom right and bottom middle there, smoked meat. So even though Montreal is where the smoked meat is famous for, there's lots of little stops along the river there where you could get a smoked meat sandwich if that was something you're interested in. And then the language. So you're not going to get away with hearing a lot from me because I'm a language teacher and also a history and geography teacher. And there's something beautiful about the Quebecois language. So whether it's you're just starting out and you're going to be able to get a little bit out of our mini language lessons every morning before we start the route, giving you like, the words that are going to be important for that day, or whether you are actually quite advanced or intermediate and you want to just practice as much as possible. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between the Quebecois language, and the French you might hear from France, for example. So some people laugh or think it's funny the way the Quebecois speak, but actually, that accent was the accent that existed at the time of Louis XIV at his court. And so sometimes where you hear that kind of, instead of moi and toi, you hear more about moi and toi. Well, that's actually court language. And it's just that here, once it got here, it didn't evolve like it did in France. Whereas in France, it was changing and evolving the whole time. So a lot of the interesting differences between European French and Quebecois French have to do with not only the lack of the evolution of the language staying more pure and the same as it was in the time of Louis XIV, or different influences. For example, the boat I have there, because Quebec was a very naval establishment colony. And so, whereas in France, when you would say to get in and out of a car or a bus or a plane, you would say monter la voiture. And in Quebec, we say embarquer and débarquer. So to embark and to debark. So that's very naval language. And there's a lot of like different expressions that come from that. Also, just from being such a traditional older language that again didn't evolve, on the left side, it's not a great picture, but it's an old ancient door where when you locked it, you put a bar over it. So when we say to lock the door in Quebec, we don't say fermer la porte à clé. We don't say close the door with the key, or verrouiller, which means to lock it. We say barrer la porte, because in those days you would take the bar and put it right over the door. Same with in France, you might say une voiture for a car, where in Quebec vernacular, we say le char. Le char comes from the chariot that you see there that would have been drawn by a horse. And then when it evolved into a real car, they actually didn't change the language so much. They didn't change the word. And then there's the swearing part.
Uh-huh.
And which is so interesting. Now I'll tell you that like after maybe a bottle of wine or two on the trip, but my mom's on this call, so I'm not going to talk about it here. But what's so interesting is all the swear words in Quebecois come from the church, come from things that are religious, right? So you would say, I'm not going to say them, but the tabernacle is a swear word, or the chalice from the that you would take communion with, or even the small piece of bread, the host. Those are all swear words in French, in Quebecois. Whereas in France, the swear words tend to be based more in like bodily functions, if you will. So that's so interesting, and we can have lots of fun with that and learning about that. The beauties and the details. Here we go. Here's what this is about. So the trip dates. We just have one date. This is like the Virgin voyage. What do we call it? I don't know. The maiden voyage. There we go.
Yeah.
Not the Virgin voyage. You're allowed to come no matter.
Okay.
Yeah. But we're going to try it out in fall, and then see how it goes from there. What's included? So it's a 6-day trip with 5 nights, and you can see all the details there. Cultural experiences. So some of the fun things we're going to do is visit that bird sanctuary and hear from our expert on the great snow goose migration. And there are other birds in migration. The St. Lawrence River just draws many different types of birds, shorebirds, etc. And keep your eyes open as we're going along, because there are seals, there are whales right into November. So sometimes we get if you're like me and you ride slowly and you're smelling all the roses and everything, you might spot a lot of ocean life or sea life on the St. Lawrence, because it's actually the whole, I call it the sea, the whole way along, starting from Quebec City, the water is actually salty.
Wow.
We also, it's fall, so we'll be visiting a verger, which is a producer of apple, like cider and cider vinegar and apple butter and things like that. We've got, it's not on here, but we've got a fromagerie along the way, which is the cheese maker. We've got, we're going to have lunch where a family friend has bees and produces lots of beautiful different honeys depending on where the hives are on their property, whether it's near the blueberries or the apple orchard or the wildflowers. We're going to have a big honey tasting at lunch that day and a big picnic. We're going to visit Le Vivoire, which is an open artist studio and artist co-op in Saint-Jean-Port-Joli. Saint-Jean-Port-Joli is a fantastic little village. It's like the sculpture capital of North America. It started out with uh, wooden statues, but every year they have like an annual huge statue, not a biennale, a biennial, but anyway, a huge festival. And so then there's this park that's just full of statues that we cycle through. It's rather beautiful. So there's lots of galleries and artists. They kind of flock to this little village. So whether it be stained glass or painting or sculpture, you'll have time to visit them. And we also visit La Seigneurie des Aulnay along the way. There are a lot of family connections here with Régis's family. So Pierre de Saint-Pierre, the first Saint Pierre, who ever came to North America as an indentured farmer, who first started on Ile d'Orléans. We'll glide by there and he'll point out that village for you. But later he actually, there was a seigneurie or a domain that was built. And we're going to go visit that because you can actually visit it and see how the seigneurial system worked in Quebec, how they milled flour in those days with all the guides in period costumes. It's a really fantastic visit. So we start and we end in Quebec City. If you sign up, if I were you, I would take an extra day or two. It's an amazing gem of a place. And for bikes, if you're bringing your own bike, that's great. Just remember the surfaces I talked to you about, so that we are on the bike path a lot, which is a little bit of like gravel. So gravel bikes are great, or just not too thin, slick tires is what I wouldn't recommend. Super thin, slick tires. You can rent bicycles, and we have gravel bikes or hybrid bikes or e-bikes that you can rent. And if you were flying in and out, I would fly in and out of Quebec City. And you have the costs there.